So thank you very much for coming today. This is truly a pleasure. As you just heard, I think I have fallen in love with Kyoto. It's my first time in Kyoto, and it's been absolutely fantastic so far, and I think will continue to be even more fantastic going forward. I would also like to thank, very specifically, Director Iyoshi for inviting me, because this really is a pleasure. And indeed, the fact that Kyoto University has a center for the promotion of excellence in higher education and has had that for 20 years, I think speaks to just how dedicated this university is to teaching and learning and to the continuing improvement of teaching and learning, which is such a critical part of the mission of any university. But clearly in Kyoto, it is a particularly important part of the mission. So what I would like to do this afternoon is spend some time with you sharing what the experience has been at Harvard in terms of engaging with MOOCs, the development of MOOCs, but in particular, how has this become an opportunity for the university to really push the envelope and improve how teaching and learning develops at the university. So I'll give you some examples and show you some of the important connections that has really allowed this to happen. So that one thing that's quite clear is that we're now at a moment where the world is being brought together far more closely by the ability to share content from one university with learners from all over the world. That this has changed the audience for virtually every university in the world. And for example, for a university like Kyoto, like Harvard, it's an opportunity for us to reach many more students than we could have ever reached in the past. But what is also true is that this is an opportunity for us to reconsider how is teaching and learning supported, how is teaching and learning promoted at the university itself. So as a biologist, I tend to think of things in biological terms. And in the same way that now the world is much smaller, thanks to MOOCs, we also need to think of the world of learning at each of our institutions. So that ultimately, every institution has an ecosystem for learning, where there are very specific components or species that work together, that collaborate sort of together, that really allow the entire ecosystem to evolve, to improve over time. At Harvard, this is not a tradition that has a very long period of time. Harvard is what's called a highly decentralized sort of institution. And because of our age, each school, each office, each unit tends to be very independent. And I'll be frank, I'll be honest, in the past, the tendency has been for each unit to do exactly what it wants and to not think that much about what other units are doing. But what was absolutely clear when the MOOC revolution began was that this was an opportunity to connect several critical units at Harvard, all focused on the development of online learning content. So what I'll do today is to talk about two major components that are deeply connected in this effort. One is the Derek Bok Center for Teaching and Learning, which this year is the 40th birthday of the Derek Bok Center. And this is a center very much focused on supporting faculty, on supporting graduate students in their teaching. And the other critical component that I'll talk about today is HarvardX, and how those two really came together in a very effective way, especially around getting faculty and professors excited about doing new things, but also supporting the process of producing MOOC content, online learning experiences. So that the MOOC is, of course, partly what we're here to really talk about today, the massive open online course. And as you know, MOOCs continue to be in the press to a really significant degree. And with almost every university you can think of, there are discussions of what the impact of this might be on almost every part of the university. And more largely, in terms of higher education, what does this mean for the experience of our students here on campus with us, but also the opportunities for learners around the world that might not have had access to really high quality online content. So when When, for example, the conversations really started in 2010, 2011, one of the major points that was made was that the MOOC would be a disruption of higher education, that this would change forever universities like Harvard and Kyoto, and what we did, how we thought about things. And when people talked about disruption, the question that was raised was, will there even be a Harvard or a Kyoto in the future? That maybe everything would be online. And that question is still being asked. Another way to think about this was whether or not it's an inflection, at the very least. In other words, is this a change in direction, a change in focus, a change in emphasis for universities like Kyoto and Harvard? But for us, the way in which we think about it is not so much in terms of disruption, it's not so much in terms of an inflection, but it's really an opportunity for transformation. This is a moment in time where institutions like ours need to ask the difficult question. In light of technology, in light of the internet, do we keep doing things the same way? Or do we transform ourselves and change how we teach in ways that make us not obsolete, but more valuable than ever before? How do we do that? Harvard is absolutely committed to this principle. This is not a disruption of Harvard. It will be, and already has been, a transformation of how we think about teaching and learning at Harvard.